All right, we're ready. So we're going to start with Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga and then Refuge and Bodhicitta as a way of correcting a motivation, and then something else I reckon will happen. This is not the file that I need, sorry. From the heart of the Sierra of the 100 deities of the Shita on a peak of cloud resembling a clump of extremely white fresh curd, King of Dhamma, omniscient Losandrakpa, please come here together with your sons. In the sky before me on lion throne, lotus and moon, my perfect pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme full of merit from a mind of faith, please abide for 100 eons to spread the teachings. Your holy mind is the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech, with its excellent explanation, is an ear ornament for those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory renowned. To you are meaningful to see, hear, and remember are prostrate. Pleasant drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incenses, light-scented waters, and so forth. Ocean of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I offer to you the supreme field of merit. Whatever non-virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite the three vows that I have collected from beginning this time, I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart. You strive for much learning and practicing the discerner shade to make your freedoms and richnesses meaningful by abandoning the eight worldly concerns. Several, we sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect, pure, holy gurus from the billion clouds of wisdom and compassion escarf the Dhammakaya. Please let fall a rain of upon extensive Dhamma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings and all transmigrated beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of the perfect, pure, whole Losandrakpa's teachings to shine forever. Sashia Puhoki Junshin Meto Tamri Rablishi Midegen Padi Sangye Shindu Mikte Owa Gidroku Namda Shila Chupasho. By the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his two sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one, Losandrakpa, where the morality of eminently pure way of life was courageous in the extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yoga of two stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. Idang Guru Ratna Mandala Kamliya Dayami. By the force of having fervently requested in this way, hollow beams of white light are emitted from the heart of the perfect pure Father and Sons, and combining into one anthem my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows from the opening of tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and the imprints without exception. My body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. So we're going to do that 5-line mixema verse on page 13. Mimete wete chen chen rezi, jime kienbe wambo jambe yang, dumu malu jomse sanweda, kanche kienbe tsugen songapa, losandrape shaula sowade. Mimete wete chen chen rezi, jime kienbe wambo jambe, dumu malu jomse sanweda, kanche kienbe tsugen songapa. Losandrape shaula sowade, mimete wete chen chen rezi, jime kienbe wambo jambe, Dobo malu jomse sanweda, kanche kienbe tsungen songapa, losandrape shaula sowade. Sangye chedan tsogi chonam la, chanchu badu dandi kyabsu chi, dagi chushi gibe tsanangi, drola benshi sangye ruparasho.
Sanji
Chodan Tsogi Chonam La Chanchu Bardu Dani Kyapsun Chi Dagi Chushi Gibatsa Drolam Benji Sanji Drupara Sho
Sanji
Chodan Tsogi Chonam La Chanchu Bardu Dani Kyapsun Dagi Chushi Gibatsa Drolam Benji
Sanji
Sanji Drupara
Sho Kangi Tuzini Zone Tawa Tamje Pambichar Tambichun Tenze Kodam Jela Chancelo. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Tanganzo Lamrim Ding Jangolam Zangabachim Song Lamrim Ding Yan Sabat India Nanganzo Za Pasa Chakchi Shogi Lamrim Ding Tonama Shudegioris Ra.
We are looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's middling presentation of the states of the path of enlightenment. So those who haven't been here before, those who are new to the center, this is what we've been doing for the last few weeks or months. We've been looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's explanation of the states of the path of enlightenment.
Dinzada Jangolama Tsungaba Chambo Konita on the Tanigi Keduni Dinki gave some Mikebachik Yimba Kanshilaya Anichik Shandamandachik Ra Ani Sanjicham Dendigi and Dongaki Shontigi that Zawa Shabitoni and Ludriyavsiki Gombachima Chichinchin Mason Dingij Mato Chik Karswatachik Tebe Dojta Chiora Tachi Tonson in Tonson Chik six Tindisawan in the Remons, Takanji Pe any Chud Sama Shuch Ma Ra Manzuta Naland and Cubic Chuzuldi and it Naland Penrutu Kang Song Shabati Tanyan Sunjene Pe and the Ransur Shayalaya and the Jangolam Tsunga Chamber with Tamjad Amazon Tembushu Yoris.
So looking at this writing of the great Tsongkhapa, we had this quality of both being a scholar, but also an accomplished master. So Lama Tsongkhapa composed his writings on the basis of the great Nalanda masters, the Indian masters. So without additions to what they say, without kind of just stating his own opinion in saying that, well, I've seen this or I've seen that. He, rather than creating his own system, he based his writing on the writings on Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, and other great Nalanda masters, and also bringing forward the terminology that they use and giving a clear and precise explanation of what those Indian masters have done. So he combined all those different sources without additions, without omissions, without creating new things in his presentation of the states of the path of enlightenment.
Bena Chanjugu Semdata, Tombani Topic Tawa Nimbutita, Sanji Chug Pigita Chik Two Chagoris, T in Bainata, Jangolam Sunga Chimbi, Be any Tulkulaya, any Chik Chanjugu Semda, Tombani Topic Yishi Carso Tachik Yons, and Zog Yobainaya, and Chik Pad Nangolaya. Any Tuso Conduchavalaya, Bezu, Nach, Penatoni topic, Chedo, Tenichik Ludria, Shon Soba, and Duzolaya, Jamba, and Digi Jamba Cheval Tenit, and it's also Drujang Chetini, and it's Child Sevala Soba, Mandapuala Soba, or Dindigi Shujik Pet Sosa Drujan Nanamato, and Chikle Lavujiki in Tesang Sorach. The maybe number the shoot day or is the Zunganzulaya, Ganzula Goya, some of those.
And looking at the writings of Lama Tsongkhapa, such as, for example, this text, it combines the two aspects of the Mahayana Dhamma practice. So bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, and an exalted knowledge that realizes selflessness. So these two comprise of the very essence of the Mahayana Dhamma that the Buddha taught. So not only Lama Tsongkhapa possessed them in a complete form in his own mind stream, in his own continuum, also in his writing, he explained in detail the way to develop them in one's own mind stream. So combining together sources such as the writings of Nagarjuna and his two Nagarjuna, and his disciples. Although Lama Tsongkhapa himself has already possessed in a complete form the wisdom that realizes selflessness and bodhicitta in his mind stream, still he explained in a very precise way, very detailed way, how to develop them in one's own mind stream, including the preparatory practices such as the 7 limbs of worship, making mandala offerings, prostrations, and so forth, accumulating the collections, purifying obscurations as way of creating the ground for the development of bodhicitta and an exalted wisdom that realizes selflessness. So all of these were explained by Lama Tsongkhapa.
Terda di ganzu kabo kaliya dewa doji tongu dosiro ganzu mugichu pondi mugichu pong ku sudum dita zawarwas ta mugichu nani penata jig zun gunang zun chishu di michulami zun set chagores michulami zun de kares na tomba ni ma don do son don do chanju gu sem gu nyom ma don ten son don do chi enel chi ladan del so ma don tongu don do 시에대저를 뜻수다 무출람이 중근은 줘야겠다 년가 빼친부여레스 딘지그지 장고로 zon가 버친볼이야 초지자와 세드 집이 샤르시 여버디 더버거려 말되네 손포도 접기 나눠라야 니직 통선 닌 통세기 식 술잠이요 말레스 비긴 따지 루드야스 강마 송바 디긴 제시다 아니 가주스기 띵사부 자야는 마도 자는 마도 코나 랑게 아니 직 믹스 통송도다 직 당난 총송도 딘지 식삼면도 왔어.
So looking at the writings of Lama Tsongkhapa, so particularly at this point in time, as we're looking at the section in the Lamrim, the middling Lamrim that explains karma, actions, and the results, and there is an emphasis of the development of ethical discipline that abstains from the 10 non-virtues. Of the 10 non-virtues, one of them is telling a great lie about one's own superhuman capacities or abilities. So if we create a certain fabrication, if we tell a lie about certain powers that we have as human beings, that constitutes telling a great lie, which is what is to be given up in relation to the 10 non-virtues. So, for example, looking at how Lama Tsongkhapa explains that in his Lamrim Chema, although you can say that having developed bodhicitta and having developed the wisdom that realizes selflessness and having come to see Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions face to face, still he's not making any such claims in his writings. He's not saying that he has realized emptiness. He's not saying that he has developed an actual experience of bodhicitta. He's not saying that he has come to see gods and demons and such face to face. He's not making any such claims in his writings. Looking at not only the practice, not only his kind of study and practice, but also the 18 volumes of teachings that Lama Tsongkhapa composed. In none of them does those statements in which he says, "I've seen such and such." Like, for example, I've seen Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and gods and demons and so forth. Such claims are not made at all.
아니 지 미초 땅 고거땅야 약슈디 아니 지 통송 닌 통송 징알에 지니 예슬라바이나 아니 미망부슈직다 고콜고요라스 텔라치 때니 때니 지 소소기다 아니 지 간지 참말로 때니 간zam질라다 지 중고도 마수 태원디 때니 아니 텔로케라 소바 아니 지 카땅야라 소바 또 참말로 아니 시자 텔 때니 용고요라스 딘디 릭직 배 아니 까메기 원내기 비례에 총여봐야냐 아니 총송세 마송야디 아니 거버균세 첨부슈 여사르스 간지 딘디 라마 삼기 메케바지키로 삼기 메케바지키트니 아니 서치 달순지 고니마 텐라 파샤바디 아니 소즈메제나라야 데스치 년섬 치 총바이나 데 델리 까와 상지다 델리 야가치 로첸데데 첨마 탐질라 아니 여사 말이스
So particularly when you think of situations that could arise in people deceiving others and claiming to have seen special things. I've seen this, or I've seen that. I have this special power or that special power. Lama Tsongkhapa is making no such claims here in his presentation. And we can see that as it happens, some people who might claim to either have seen those special things or might possess special powers use that in order to deceive others. In the end, it often results in states in which the deception is being exposed, people develop wrong faith, or they turn their back on the faith that they have. So Lama Tsongkhapa is not making any such claims. He has composed this presentation on the basis of those great masters in bringing those sources together as just a precise explanation of how to progress without making any such claims.
디 갑두들이야 당한들이 갑두들이야 땡인지 갸불레스 다와 까마제바 넬홍시 르다 총도 진비 사실라 남긴 감는 넘바 셴교냐 견은 메덴바이 sigma 송세디 가정한 직 장바레스 간지디 직디다 배야부도 아스라 산직 송랑레 다야부도 여라.
And with that in mind, we're going to go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off in the previous session. So we read in the previous session this quotation from the King of Concentration Sutra, which says, even if the moon and stars were to fall, the earth were to collapse with its mountains and towns, and the heavenly realms were to utterly change, still no word you have spoken would be untrue. So this is a good quotation, isn't it? Of course, it's a good quotation. We're looking at the teachings of the Buddha, but it's a good source. There's actually one thing that I forgot to say in relation to the previous part. So Geshe said that also, looking at the writings of Lama Tsongkhapa, you can see that the sources that he brought together are sources that are used in the threefold analysis, as if you were to investigate a nugget of gold, in that you scratch it, you cut it, and you mentally tin fire in order to make sure that it is an authentic piece of teaching. And the same type of attitude is brought into the way that we scrutinize the teachings of the Buddha, but also the ones that Lama Tsongkhapa put forward.
그래서 디르다 산직송 난신기 아니 장고로 Tsongkhapa 챔비기다 직 가서다 유두 간다지라 있나요? 안직 가르 총바 있나요? 아니 Lama Tsongkhapa에다 메덴 비식 무송바디 야자야단 바레스 강 송바디 아니 직 서치 달숨지고니 아니 제반난치니 녜바니친 송여바디 야자야단 바 이치치 초그레스 딘디 이치치니 아니 당이 디송 칭년바는 땡땡알이야 펜도지다 롭게지다 센데데 치마 탐질라 직 펜도 용거리 삼니 녜바이나 야자야단바 아니 식직니나 펜도 니니나 펜도 짠자 용거리스라.
So as it says here in quoting the King of Concentration Sutra, even if the moon and stars were to fall, the earth were to collapse with its mountains and towns, and the heavenly realms were to utterly change, still no word you have spoken would be untrue. And the same thing can be spoken by Lama Tsongkhapa himself. So looking at his writings, if we were to analyze and scrutinize the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa in the same way as we said that we were to investigate a nugget of gold, if we were to cut it, rub it, or melt it in fire, still we would see that it is an authentic piece of gold. Similarly here, if you analyze those teachings in this way, you will find that there's no word in those teachings that would be untrue. And therefore, it is the qualities of Lamrim Tsongkhapa are inconceivable. And if we study one verse or two verses, one lines or two lines from this text, even if we limit ourselves to this, still there would be benefit from those teachings.
네, 아니 대세시 비송라 이치바 첼라 짱데 들 주미징 이바 마니나 쳐 칸라야 야와지비 이바 미니토스 가지 동반이라 이바 케세니 렌델라 이바 메치 텔라메서는 돈이지코 신줄로도 손데 돈이 권한이 대니 땡디지 된도 돈이 렌델라 이바 기비 족순규비 체데 너 대니레 규모출 미규롱다시 최남 탐지 추이 다와시 신인 직된 바른 조이 심진 실리께바 미미냐 레남 제바메바 민교디 까나 지진 제부 멤버치 리비츠기 곤드 상보티 타신 통과 야위 주인 셰소스.
So after the quotation from the King of Concentration Sutra, it says, you should thus develop conviction in the words of the Tathagata and maintain it. Unless you have gained uncontrived certainty about them, you will not gain the certainty that pleases the victors about any Dhamma teachings. Some profess to have gained certainty about emptiness, yet do not have certainty about actions and their effects, nor even care about it. They have arrived at a mistaken understanding of emptiness, for if they understood emptiness, they would see it to be the meaning of dependent arising, which would be helpful for gaining certainty about actions and their effects. From the same sutra, the King of Concentration Sutra, it says, like an illusion, a bubble, a mirage, or lightning, all phenomena are like the moon in water. Sentient beings who are after death pass to other lives are not perceived, yet the actions they have done are not non-existent, for whether virtues or non-virtues, they cause their effects to ripen accordingly. This logically consistent approach is excellent. Though subtle and hard to see, it is the victor's object of understanding. Therefore, you should generate certainty about yeah, okay, let's stop here. That's all.
야, 디나올라야 직단다 님보로디 갈송고레슬라온디 난주다 직 레균rel야 아니 직 스송 최고야디 아니 개치 난게 된신들레스 아니 까까려야 가시기다 직 동반일야 고와 차동도 제진네 동바슬라온디 따직 지야 매바질야 아니 군세진네 드네 직 레균rel라 소바 지메 땅데디 아니 동반님 고아디 신줄로도 송바리스 어디송도스라.
So looking at the meaning that we can draw from this section, first of all, it emphasizes the importance of guarding karma actions and its results. It says that you should thus develop conviction in the words of the Tathagata and maintain it. You should have certainty, gain certainty about karma actions and the results. Now, you should gain certainty about actions and the results, because here Lamrim Tsongkhapa emphasizes it, because some claim that they have understood emptiness, and in pretending to have understood emptiness, they think that emptiness means just a mere vacuity, a vacuous state in which nothing exists, and thereby they also claim that our actions do not matter, that did not issue forth such a result. So Lamrim Tsongkhapa says here that we should be careful in generating such a wrong understanding, an erroneous understanding of emptiness, and thereby develop a nihilistic approach in which we deny karma actions and its results. If we develop a good understanding of emptiness, we will then also have a good understanding, great understanding of dependent origination, and we will also appreciate it to a great degree.
tempo chomden delaya chobo jondi kankan ken la ralepe agora kankan ken la ralepe tede ranjin kidonji somban dele yamzen bi legdam chuni chishiyos ani tempo chomden di kerangi ken la raleble teni tongbare sonjaye tele lagwaji da ani dambachik ngot searching dambachik da kana yes o dindichik sonyoras darwa.
Lamrim Tsongkhapa said in one of the texts that he composed, Praises to Dependent Arising, that whatever arises through conditions, the Muni, the Buddha, said to be empty. What amazing teachings they are. Lamrim Tsongkhapa praises the Buddha. There is no instruction that is greater than this.
Tereda di tukla shagwa di pe kechamburo tong se di ani rawang gi tongba slavandigi ani shen la temba chik ta ko tengi koya chik yorwas ro o dindri gi tone da ani tongni gi tole ya cheba cheba ina ani shen la tembi chane ani rawang gi tongba imba dindri cheba china ya ani tongni gi tendi tini ting sabr tombanyi ki kazu ting sabro ti tsugi ani lendre ki rodan ti ani pe ani kechembu ani dela ya rangshin ki tsison chiya chik ro ani di ngo sares.
So empty or emptiness. What it means is that a particular thing in question is empty of independent existence. Since it is not independently existent, it depends upon others. Since it depends upon others, it doesn't exist independently. And therefore, when you look at actions and the results, you don't develop an analytic approach to that. You see that actions produce the results because the results, for example, do not exist independently.
The denjongi denjongi samlo di tone da ji zewa nyinji chenbo ina ting sabshu di denjongi samlo tone kia chamba ina denjong chanju gu sem ina denjong kanji legbi cha tamjen rengi di ani denjongi samba di chaga yosares ro deme gi samba yosavijila mit ni para ina ya chikchila ya deme gi samba yoba ina ani tumbu chaga mundas ro odire.
Looking at any positive qualities that we would develop, for example, a sense of concern for others, it is better developed through dependent origination, through seeing dependent origination. Loving kindness, also through dependent origination. Bodhicitta is better developed through seeing dependent origination. So all good qualities would be developed through that. Whereas opposite to that, if we do not regard dependent origination, dependent arising, if we, for example, between ourselves and our relationship, between two people, if there is a certain apprehension of existing in a way that is unreliant or independent, problems arise. We can see that problems arise when, for example, we relate to others as to ourselves and others as existing independently, not in relation to each other.
Pamalaya shu Togoenza, Pamalape, Gawayoras, Pama Nimachi Mevaina, Dema Tugosorach. That Chembucha and the Pamala Demagudi, Susu Kambegala Lantudi, and the Pama Gengo Name Tanchi, and the Migmatan, Royal Soba, that Tinguyoras, Lonely Lo Pama Matuana, Semna Martin Sorach. Did they make some Titonda, Yunguyabata, Sewu Shujeras.
So we can clearly see that notion of being independent or reliant upon others that arises in the mind from time to time. Like, for example, when you're a child depends upon their mother. There's that close dependency between a child and the mother, to the point in which if the mother is not there, the child might feel disturbed or distressed, and when the mother is there, then the child feels very happy or very comfortable. But then as we grow up and we grow somewhat distant from our parents, it could happen that even if we don't see our mother or parents for 2 or 3 years, it will not matter a great deal to us. We might even then at some point completely forget about them, developing that sense that we're completely independent and unreliant upon others. We can see that happening in our own minds.
There's a 당한지 내가 자마인 바 탱우빈 내출이야 땡종인 바디 라 유무빈 내초급이 땡인 종출 땡종인 바디 되는 주고요 봐 현在对吧인 바디 아니 same thing 이번 유튜브에나 되니 신야와 토픽 삼로디 야자자타마 당가고서레스 다 딩가바이나 아니 현在제와 아니 제와 니지 첨부세야 되니 랑신게 아니 가드이나 박페부로 연구여서레스.
So that if we understand the nature of phenomena, being dependently arisen phenomena, if we understand emptiness of independent existence, then we will see the reliant nature of our relationship with others. And from that, there will arise loving concern for others, loving kindness towards others, the sense of closeness between ourselves and others, which also brings about a sense of comfort and happiness to our mind.
Denas le니 gyudang jeburchebala ngebakeji ninsen kondo gosumla toba shigi ngandro chugis tomara gyundegi namyela minkeshi chongse shijang gosum payan sunjubani ngandru gonjeba konade damsu shibale lui dabo chanchu semba namki chuchiki ngansong ngandro lokor tongwa kewa yang tawar chodo chuchibo de kansinan dade da chedarin gyoji ninsen nam dashi du nyamdu giwi chul namla susu tobati shesum bicheros.
Continuing with our reading, it says, therefore, you should generate certainty about cause and effect pertaining to both types of karma and cut yourself off from the lower rebirths by continuously examining the three doors day and night. To start out with the little understanding and no skill in differentiating these causes and effects, and to remain carefree regarding the three doors only opens the door to the lower rebirths. Questions of the Naga Kings, Sagara Sutra says, Lord of Nagas, one dharma of bodhisattvas cuts off falling back down and being born in the lower rebirths. What is that one dharma? It is to find and investigate with regards to virtuous qualities, thinking, how am I doing? Am I transgressing or maintaining them day and night? Having thought about it in this way, one turns away from faulty conduct, as expressed in this Satyaka chapter.
어디다 당간조 비기게 직 개왕하시 라 개왕하시 나도 개와치마 간들을 개용 삼삼기 아니 도바점에 매나 개와치마 된주 토야기 주주야 카보로스 라 첸디기 다직 디기 잠로치 라 첸디스 라운디다 아니 뒤주 통동 쇼지로스 다 딘디질에 차대바나 텔라 차비 왕기 첸디기 아니 랑치고 대야기 체도로치 랑치고 대야기 체도 되니 셴라야 아니 직 세워진발라 소바 마타와 제발라 소바 간지 삼로 아니 참만님비 삼로디 마부슈 레대야지 딜레바이나 안 센딜레나 수수다 기우메와지 연구여봤다 자시자다 버려왔으라 인제 딘디 토니 오늘 추 내든래야 삼로단 추 내든 수수 마시바네 피기 추 내든 셰셰규 시부유유 벤 람롱 딘다 딘딜래야지 니마 드니 아니 론 삼단와이나 덴덴 코아 용촉으로 왔으라.
So if we don't think about past and future lifetimes, if we don't think of what will occur to us in future lifetimes, if we don't think about it at all, would be solely concerned about what will occur to us in this life, and that we'll be concerned about whatever happiness or comfort we can obtain in this life. We'll be thinking many of ourselves in relation to that, and it might then happen that because we are concerned about our own welfare, well-being, in a life that is so short, we will then act in a way that is dishonest, inflicting harm on others, ignoring others, and so forth, then the result of such actions would be only the experience of problems or unsuitable states in this life.
데리다 갑가라야 당한주 개와 치매 된다 상단다 아니 간주 돈 도구요 말은 돈 통구요 말 하는 거구요 말다 디다 안 추메교로지레 상상 다 딘디 상단은 체디 다지 아니 디기 비기 트롤라도 소리 단 통시고라서 라 이내양 간주 디기 되고요자 대바 약슈디 셈파페보 셈르르지여바이나 아니 디기 약슈디 디렌도스라 셈 파베보메 셈 기부메 바이나 아니 지 균널론조 가주스여 바이나야 아니 기부 문도스 때 딘딩 간주 온숨 통고도스라 데서 깨어 침미 되나야 상데스 다운토 바이나 아니 랑싱기 아니 지 개월 점바다 딕벌은 젬바치 마치 타메치 대체 바이나 아니 참 명인비기 단지 슈데야기 아니 착담 모송기 로디기디 뇽르드야지 디 뇽르드바나 랑싱기
So then we might think with respect to future lifetimes that I don't see future lifetimes and don't realize the existence of future lifetimes. And therefore, if I become concerned about it in the future, it will decrease the happiness that I have in this life, which is something that is more visible to me. So if I invest my time in future lifetimes, it will come at the expense of the happiness or well-being, the happiness or comfort that I can get in this life. But then when we think about what would make us be happy or well in this life, what gives us happiness and well-being is a quiescent state of mind, a state of mind which is vast and spacious. A relaxed state of mind is something that will make a life happier or comfortable. Now, it is also quite clear that even if you have a lot of resources, wealth, and so forth, it's not guaranteed that they will give you the mental relaxation or space in your mind, spaciousness in your mind. It is quite clear that some have great access to resources and still they do not get that mental happiness that they seek. So then thinking of what will make our mind become vast and spacious, be more relaxed, so long as we disregard actions and results in that, so long as we do not shun from performing negative actions, so long as we do not deliberately also act in a positive way, our mind will not find that state of peace that we're looking for. So that sense of peace or relaxation will come from making sure at least that as much as possible we abstain from negative behavior and we develop behavior that is positive.
Tadiri shesumi tadar samni kyans nyechul dobi chulne se tirda demba tambi levule gyabu kyon sokchu manzichi kyo konla son shundum pang devi yurin seson sundebi yi kolawa sokchu musamu sheson batar sonde tichagores dara.
So Lama Tsongkhapa says, having thought about it in this way, one turns away from faulty conduct as expressed in the Satyaka chapter. O king, do not commit the act of killing. Life is very precious for every being. Therefore, those who wish to keep it long should not contemplate killing even deep down.
Terida ji sokju majin balance bala sobal lembadi kala teni yungu yores lavdi rang la chakba ro rang tsin dila chakbi wangita yungu yobad jashi jada maro ta tsin di tsam gi togu tamsam kona samdan ro deba na tene ani matang marong bigi ani chi chawa tsamal ya tan ju goya suraj gonggen suraj chado waras ro ta di ju baina ani rangshing kanji neka pigi chi togu tindila ya and tes chik raba ina ya sem nalo la ya chik magi lolo chik gachi yadama chagwa sares ra.
So where does such negative behavior come from? Well, it comes from attachment to oneself, attachment to one's own life. So through that, we get so attached to food and clothing and social interactions and so forth. And when we become so attached to food, clothing, social interactions and so forth, and trying as much as possible to obtain them, at some point, we might even give way to a behavior that is dishonest, that is not suitable or not worthy. And that even if, and with that type of behavior, even if you get what you want at the end, even if you get the food that you wanted, the clothing that you wanted, and so forth, Geshe reckons that certainly 100% certain that there will also be a sense of discomfort that will creep in into your mind.
Nga gen rumbuchi da shabla ya da lomong rangla deba yanza kaddu na nga gen mang cha dojla ya lendre zusong chigo re lendre zusong chigo da gen su tu na doji kaddu ina doji pi da tama gen gonglo gubchu kodan la pene ji ya ji kusu ya shama deba kaddu na ani keche shu song ya lendre zusong chigo re song de di tu tak di yores su sem na la kanda doji na samsung samgora da 단도 두 시온디게 지 아니 게위 게드 용담 용세디 냠레 용담 용세디 렌데라 투도스 라 렌데 소 마제바이나 가르무 가르 침부단 지 망부지 시에 쌈 가르체 대바이나야 아니 고 게와 차금도스 렌데 소 치는 줘바이나 다가나 르nga 예섬디 아니 게위 촐라연 로데와치 nenga shuj insaresra.
In the last few years of Geshe's teacher's life, when he was bedridden and he was staying with Geshe, he used to say every so often, very often, that you should really regard karma. Make sure that you take karma into consideration, karma actions and results. Not only told that to Geshe day in and day out, but also he made that point to the people that he was meeting daily towards the end of his life. And at some point, Geshe sons were thinking, like, what's up in his mind? What is he thinking about? But really, when we think about this message of giving the right regard to karma actions and results, then if we don't really take it into consideration, if we don't really regard it very highly, we might be then thinking that we are putting the Dharma into practice. We might thinking that we're cultivating a certain connection between a teacher and student and so forth, but really without having the right consideration of karma, without having a sense of regard to karma, we're not going to be practicing correctly. Practice of virtue and the abstention from non-virtues has to be done on the basis of developing that high regard to karma.
Teresa, dinza daji kasa dan gogor tang tu salaya gogor tang ma vishe sara salaya ma vishe ani gogor tu go tu sundro devana pigi lu namgyulaya karmu kar che devana ya ani kanji sanji bi chulaya drog me bad jaji jata mareshas ro sanji bi chudi ta namjungan ta tabashu de sanji bi chudi chambu tanjang demba denjang shil shabi toni ani shenlaya pendo tuya shenlaya cheo ma che di
So we might be deceiving others, we might be lying to others and so forth. And regardless of what type of physical expression or kind of body language we portray, using those deceitful attitudes, whatever we practice is not going to be the practice of the Buddha Dharma. Which means that the crucial factor is the factor of motivation or intention, making sure that a motivation and intention are positive, not deceitful, not we're not creating a pretense, but to be genuine and honest as much as we can.
Puchung walas kamlong be Geshe pan lendre kona kachiwa songbala tata shebata nyembata gongrum mebar chedi de kona nyamsu lanka nyam sombi pojongya te zula songwa tang tenbi shanis chowa ingam chir maro tendende cha songwa tang pojongya shani ngani gekar zamlu la kalen songba tang sharawi shani sanji ji nyegen chin jongya chongen tang kalen la lene mandebar len dichibin dirki chawa shada songos.
So the text continues in saying like this, make a consistent habit of relying on the mind of restraint. Your motivation not moving one bit towards misdeeds like the 10 non-virtues. Kamlungpa said to Puchungwa, Geshe Dromtomba thought that only actions and their effects were of vital importance. But nowadays, explaining this, listening to it and meditating on it are considered worthless. This is just because it is difficult. Is this just because it is difficult to practice? Puchungwa said, it is just so. Dromtomba said, followers of Atisha, recklessness is totally inappropriate. This dependent arising is subtle. Puchungwa said, in my old age, I'm at last turning to the Sutra of the wise and the foolish. And Sharawa said, the Buddha taught that whatever errors and faults come about, they should not be blamed on an inauspicious place or on the construction of some building. It is simply that by doing this action in the past, I'm born here now.
Teda dan iban is etymology. Teda nichu gi magobalan bebgang pameba do nyumu mawala sobi ongi nyeban jona chimmenyaba shadu morowe temba tuji jengi chirjibi tabsumba namla beb goso teyan ton chirjun domba sum susunu sumba tarchala digba chirjiba ni dobji chebo dobji chawos tela tob tambo sunjimbi tobni toma mebani megewa chebalan joba mawa indi Dikevala namen sojin jebusum kitsur gom goso laglengi tse sewetambi shakbatan sanji songi goni shakbani chawos.
Let's look at the next section that explains in particular how to purify bad actions by means of the four powers. Even though you try to avoid being tainted by faulty conduct, some faults may occur under the influence of carelessness or a multitude of mental afflictions. Do not ignore it. You must make an effort to engage in the means for rectifying it as taught in by the compassionate teacher. Infractions against one's vows should be rectified as it is taught according to each of the three types of vows, while bad actions should be rectified by means of the four powers. So since it refers to rectifying negative actions by means of the four powers, let's begin with the first power, which is the power of remorse. The first of the four powers is the power of remorse, which is to have a great regret for the non-virtuous deeds one has done since beginning this time. For it to arise, one needs to meditate on how the three types of effects, such as the fully ripened effect, are produced. When applying this power, use the two confessions, the confession in the Golden Light Sutra and the confession of the 35 Buddhas.
Terda danganzo ngada ngada da chik le tambowa pigi da chik nyumu mawa an pa meba da dindi gi shawan de chödeng kadui na da chik nyebi shilaya shuya di jacha jadaw jrewas naya ani chik nyebi shulaya shilaya shugni ani pigi shasha mayimba ani tema tagdu da pa shagdam chegi tabla bev goya da kicheshu chagores le tambu kale kicheshu chagores.
So for us as beginners, and Geshe includes himself in saying so, still in afflictions predominate and being also unconscientious, you end up committing faults. So it's important not to let them be, leave them as they leave them to be, but to confess and purify them with a sense of restraint as soon as we find out that a certain fault has been committed. It's important to do it as soon as possible.
들다 다 샤담 칸르치고레스 샤담 칸르치고레스 라운디 안 템바카딘싱 저런 샤담 치에게 탑송서 샤주 투수 돌아야 아니 배우고레스.
So how then do we lay down those negativities and restrain? Well, we do that through the means that were taught by the Buddha.
당이 투수 싱금에다 가르치고레스 라와이노 다 장고그레스 로 장고르마도 싱금마레스. nga tuzu me nga chi ni sam de de ba na teni tuzu rag mari jang tu mari sing mari teni da yong me yu cha gres ro.
So then if you think or say, I don't know how to do it, well, you need to train, you need to study how to do it. If you think, I don't have the time to do it, well, so long as you think that you don't have the time to do it, you will not find the time to do it. You will not purify, you will not train, you will not study if you think, I don't have the time to do it.
들다 tuzu 땡고다 서랑한 tuzu 땡고다 다 아니 자와 아니 최종라 되니 고바 최종라 되니 아니 지 고바 총도서 샤 아니 고바 체라 주야 어딘지 진 만들어봐이나 아니 지비 샘디 차담모스 슈크체바 디 가르치지 서로 땅샤와이나 뒤저라고 말았어.
So we need to allocate the time to do it. Without allocating the time to do it, and looking at different things that we do things which are great and we do things that are not that great. Things are quite, you can say, minute or insignificant. So long as we don't really sort out our priorities and think that allocating time for purifying negative actions I've done before, laying them down and restraining my mind, so long as we think that this is a priority, we will not allocate the time to do it. So it's important to make sure that we sort out our priorities.
들다 nganzu chidang gibi ta chi namyang chegi tuzu ten tugoyorasra kamgem royal soba chi ta dindigi ro ani tuzu di mamuten tugo nanshingi lobjon chegi hagdon chi ani chu nyamlen chegi ani tuzu ten bayna katsu tuzu ten ba di chegi ani sozolaya pendok chi yungorasra.
So in thinking that we don't have a lot of time to do it, we can say that we actually find time or we allocate time to things that have to do with distraction, in that we find the time to go out, to hang out, to go traveling and so forth. We do find the time to do those things. So then if we also make sure that we allocate the time to study, to train, then in time things will become easier for us. We'll be able to do it better.
tuzu rabati tuzu yobati and pigi kaso ta chi chinjong so jun de de bana rana pena ta chi chuche tuzu tenjin chuche tuzu ji rabi kabdula ya chi choba pya so da an chi nga sa ya dinji so ji dinji so ji tuzu zo chu de bana ani lab chimbu chago mares ro de 다 뒤져 가라바디 피기 nenga 차지라 반 주치느라 아니 지 깔레 카사지라 주니 디 롭존치니 디 장바이나 되니 고다마스나 아니 첨부지 체용 거여서레스 뭔가 끼어 담아서 두스는 거여서레스라.
But also when you do allocate the time for practice, if you take on things which are not that important to your practice, again, you'll not gain much from it. So for example, you've allocated the time for doing some spiritual practice, but you use the time mainly to make offerings, to do recitations of mantras and so forth. The result that you get from that would be quite limited. So when you do allocate time, also think of what would be a great thing to do. taking up a topic that is considered to be important, great topic, you study that and you put it into practice. And obviously, when you focus on something that is greater, the result that you get is greater.
Then chobapiada any money dial so dozo kitchenbu maris, sugar maris, so kitchenbu is the inaya be chu netunji shini chobapiada machine pigita tebatsam gutoni chobapia niboti and the love chejondi namsa tuyasaris. Nedun shib toni chobaj piwaina, then chobapusigi yul manavajilaya chobapituguri. 아니 콜론 남다지 토네 초바 피투그리 미 야청부 심니 초바 피투그리스 디 아니 배숙청부 차가로 와서
Now, when we've mentioned making offerings or doing some recitation of mantras, such as, for example, the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, it's not to say that these things are insignificant, but there would be a great difference in terms of the efficacy of your practice if you know how to practice, or if you just base your practice on faith. In that, if you make sure that your practice is based on knowledge, on informed faith, which means that you have studied and you also use your study, you apply your study to your practice, then at the time of making offerings, then you'll be able to precisely identify the objects of offering. You will be able to carry out the motivation in making this offering. You'll be able to extend your focus to include many in your objects of observation. So that will come through knowing how to practice rather than just making offerings based on faith.
Rather, when a person to danger digbaina and pig chug nedun shibaina, penatachi democratic kuch danger shibaina, and democratic kusun took some key yon den tempitone, and it could danger shibaina, shoes love chimuchagaris. That decayment that tempering get at chimushujere, yabushujere, that need them because danger sugar samna, yabures inaya, pigita,
there would be a great difference like between the sky and the earth in terms of your practice. So then with respect to, for example, keeping in your possession things that represent qualities of body, speech, and mind of Buddha, statues, tankas, stupas, and so forth. If you decide to obtain those things, to, for example, obtain a Buddha statue, and you think that for me, it's a basis for recollecting the good qualities of body, speech, and mind, then they serve a particular purpose. Whereas if you just think about, it's just important for me to have a Buddha statue, therefore I'm just going to obtain a Buddha statue, without thinking that for you, it's a basis for recollecting the qualities of body, speech, and mind, then the benefit that you get from that will be very limited.
아니 꾸직 덴데 슈바이나야 아니 꾸 gyupjati ti chona sore jumodo shedale tu maras 아니 gyupja karima gyupja chi yakbudo 아니 공칭부터 지기바나 디 코랑 텐데 sore 차야 년가 요라스 디 마임바 아니 비기 추려야 장바디스 셔바나 아니 꾸손 투승고 용덴텔야 이원 trou버지 디 또기다 아니 꾸손 투데 딘디 여바나 아니 배 아니 개바침부여서레스 아니 뒤도 넘버건도 아니 지 수술라 예비 고송투된 가든 제바이나야 디티티티라야 아니 고송투기 연된 템바치 산지 제수 템바세디 용거로 왔으라.
If you don't think of the qualities of body, speech, and mind in relation to those objects, then you might obtain, for example, a Buddha statue, and it might be that the only sense of appreciation that will arise in your mind would be an appreciation that is related to how expensive that statue was or being made of a particular material. But it would be not much more than that. Whereas if you use those objects, statues, stupas, tankas, and so forth, those things that for us represent the qualities of body, speech, and mind, if you use them to make you remember those qualities of body, speech, and mind, and also to develop that sense of delight or inspiration by thinking of those qualities of body, speech, and mind, then those objects serve the purpose. You keep them with a certain purpose.
rabjon chok ni pi labasum ki ani mendusho ani pi shaya gi chedu shadam chedan chigdam ani digba pi digba megiwa ro ani megiwa chulo soba chebkalya ani digba shadam chigi ani shadam rimba mendo ni sonyores.
Now, as for the process of laying down on negativities and restraining a mind in the process of purification, the Buddha, the kind teacher, gave rites for example, for monastics to purify faults that they have incurred in relation to their trainings, the 3 trainings. And also, on top of that, the Buddha also gave methods or explanation of the way to purify faults in relation to ethics, in relation to not having guarded ethics that absent from the 10 non-virtues.
digpa singiteleya yonden chigiyore yobadi ani shagne dagju yobad digbi yondere sediyadi da ungkebe tamba samlog de songodas ra tirewaros di shingo wasares shagne dagju yobadi shimbi toni ani shagdam sujendu chebayna ani kenan digba tobchin kandris cheyobayna ya di tagrogres.
So then when we lay down our negativities and restrain the mind in the process of purification, we do that, for example, in relation to the different vows that we have, right? So we have different tiers or levels of vows, and in relation to each one of them, we can lay down the negativities that we have accumulated and restrain our mind. And in order to do that, we also need to recognize negativities for being negativities. The Buddha said that if we were to think of one good quality of a negativity, the good quality of a negativity is that it can be purified. But for it to be purified, we need to recognize it from being negative.
단지 시대다 토모 매반이 아니 토모 매반 다답 하르도 되니가 따직 내자시에 때무슨 그 온도 ჩვენ 대바인사 아니 딕바 탐 매바 체여바디 다 갸차 갸탐바로스 갸차 갸담아 임바디 셈레샤는다 티타 드릭문두 삼비 비기타 직 셈띵닝 교바기야지 게투바나 다디 아니 순진비 또
As it says just before the first part, infractions against one's vows should be rectified as it is taught according to each of the 3 types of vows, while negative actions, bad actions, should be rectified by means of the 4 powers. Now, looking at the first power, the power of remorse or the power of repudiation, it says the first of the 4 powers is the power of remorse, which is to have great regret for the non-virtuous deeds one has done since beginningless time. So since we've been around since time without beginning and up until now, certainly we've already done countless negative actions. So we recognize, we think of having done countless negative actions, and from the bottom of our heart, we develop a deep sense of regret.
Dirda gyoba chimbi toni tenida lagnen gitse sewa tambi gi shagba tan sanji songi koni shagba slano malana kanji ani digi ani gyoba chimbi toni tene chik sanji gi tsen rangya la soba ani tsenga rangya la soba ro ani mane dayal soba o dinti toni ro ani deshi shebe da sanji sumji song senga dayal zu toni chebaina ani nyebadi sunjimbi top chagres.
Through having a great sense of regret, we do either the confession in the Golden Light Sutra or the confession to the 35 Buddhas. We recite either the name of the Buddha or the mantras of the Buddha. We do recitations of certain mantras, such as, for example, the many mantras and so forth. So all of these are done with that deep sense of regret in our mind. So if we have that great regret for faults that we have done before, regretting faults is the first power, which is called the power of remorse or the power of repudiation.
The direda sanji sumju song goni shaba chedi kechimbu pe inzar jangolam sunga ba chimbe dipe ani kechimbu tsi chimbu shu nani mixe ke da ji pa retrada masun tindijile pevni ani sanji sumju song goni teni ani shadam shuj nang yorwas namtar nan dindi khugores.
Here Lama Tsongkhapa mentions the confession to the 35 Buddhas, which is so important. Lama Tsongkhapa emphasized that. He himself has gone up to a mountain retreat and focused on practices of purification using this practice of 35 Buddhas. This is one of the things that you find in Lama Tsongkhapa's biography.
But did say Pena Sanji Sumju Song Sanga time Kabdula Tenda Tenlaya Samlo Namalaya Sanji Gitachik and Sen Gomiat Sanji Gomiat Sanji Tendi Yunguras the Sheni Sanji Sen Joba and Luni Chatsi Tubana Tedanyam the Chap Tubana and Lunga Yisum Goni Piggy the Shagdamlay and Dugores the Love Chishu Chagores.
So when you take up this practice of 35 Buddhas, then with your speech, you recite the names of the Buddha. In your mind, you recollect those Buddhas, you meditate on those Buddhas. And then if you can also offer prostrations, then with your body, you offer prostrations so that this practice of purification involves your body, speech, and mind. And as such, it becomes very powerful.
Tadini niba nimbu kundu chubi tops, nimbu kundu chubi topla truk, dorde samula temba, tomba nila meba, deba la temba, kuzu la temba, choba la temba, sen la temba was.
Now, the second power is the power of fully applying the antidote, the power of thorough application of the antidote. This has 6 points: relying on the Profound Sutras, believing in emptiness, relying on recitation, relying on images, relying on worship, and relying on names.
Tadiri dinanong ya, ta nimbu kundu chubi top chami kabdula, ta nganzu le thambo la ya, keche shu di dorde samula temba sati. Kanji, ani sanji chomden digi tsubi, ani chik genruk choni la soba. O dindigi, ani songrub lokba, zimba la soba chia di, ta keche shu res. Ta tela teni, tenda shinya ji yunguri, tenda shibayna, ani gom tuya ji yunguri, gom yugi chuji yobana, ani komdi teya ji yunguri, komdi teya bayna yubatan tugures. Ta di mena keke megyo chi chagwaras.
So the first of the power of fully applying the antidote is relying on the Profound Sutras. That becomes very important, particularly for beginners. So it says the first is to hear the words of the collection of sutras, like the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So to read or recite the sutras of the Buddha, to read or recite the teachings of the Indian masters, such as the 6 ornaments and the 2 supreme ones. So we read them, we recite them, and through that, we then come to understand them. When we come to understand them, we can use them in our meditation. When we use them in our meditation, we create habits. When we create habits, a transformation occurs. This is the way to transform our mind. It is through the development of habits. So therefore, this power of fully applying the antidote becomes really important in relation to relying on the profound sutras.
디 사르스다 페나 란든 드비야기 탑 약슈디 셴든 드비야기 탑 약슈디 아니 피기 따지 도르데 사몰레 템바티 디 사르스 홍구 깨우 담바초 다 산지 좀 된디니 치니 다 홍구 깨우 담바 사몰로기 다 셴든 바식 삼니 아니 ngombo 산지 여러스 다 ngombo 산지니 셴든 지야기 아니 셴든 제 조로디 셴라야 랍시기한테 셴라야 아니 그게 다 지금 덴바식 주비 아니 어디기디다 모두 지야들어서 다디마 모두 지야디 이토라 밤네 샤야디 다 딜릴 하지 아니 셴든 지야지 지야기 탑지 다 유여서 말았어 다 디마도 먼저 왔어 산지 좀 된디 페놀로니 동갑게 주여 줘서 당한주 산지 이 송딜이야 제니 안 교탄투나 투르마도 델리 셴바지 탑시 지에만도스 된자 안 도데 사몰레 템바디 개치주는 치슈티 차고 살았어.
So thinking of the importance on relying on the profound sutras, if we think about it in relation to the benefit of oneself, but even more so in relation to the benefit of others, accomplishing or establishing the welfare of others. So the Buddha, having attained a state of complete and perfect enlightenment, have gave teachings to others, gave advice, gave precepts, gave teachings to begin with on the four truths and so forth. And then those teachings were put in writing. So if there is a way of benefiting other living beings, the best way to benefit them would be through giving them such teachings, which are now found in scripture. So there is no better way of benefiting other sentient beings, particularly when you think of the Buddha having passed away 2,600 years ago, and the ability then of the Buddha to still benefit us at this point in time. The way to do it is through the written words, through the teachings that the Buddha gave. So we read through those scriptures, then we develop an understanding of what the Buddha said. This is the way that the Buddha has benefited others. So therefore, when you look at the second part, the power of thorough application of the antidote, of the different bits that are mentioned in this part, the most important thing seems to be relying on the profound sutras.
데레단 도데 사몰라 템바이나 도데 사몰 템반다 고버페 망부로 랑기 께이나 텔데는 통토야 셴기 연데이나 텔데는 통토야 몽보 마리바이나 텔데는 세토야 로 사몰로 도데 사몰 템바티 용고도 왔으로.
It's important because when you look at, for example, the ability to see your own faults, you can see your own faults through relying on the profound sutras. You can recognize the qualities of others through relying upon the profound sutras. You can develop an insight into reality, develop wisdom through relying upon the profound sutras.
다드네 똥바니라 메바드다 이다 이임바다 비기다 똥바니 단지 만너와지 원zen치 투바나 야 랍친 슈레스 다디마힘바다 지피 단지 콘 담보 주디니 다지 똥바니 세야디 지 지야메바 소르질이야 성담바이나니 다 마리바키에 기소르지모도 게 용고에서 말아스 안 데발 템바다 구줄레 템바 초발레 템바 센레 템바 어두 탐제다 야부지 존나다 야부베 디마존나 양고 텔레냥가 소르지 도스라.
So I should have said eliminating or dispelling your own ignorance is also done in reliance upon the profound sutras. So that's the first of the power of fully applying the antidote. Now the second is meditating on emptiness or believing in emptiness. The second is to enter into selflessness and luminous reality and to trust in primordial purity. So believing in emptiness, of course, needs to be done through having the correct understanding of emptiness, because if you take emptiness to mean nothing whatsoever, in that you take nothing whatsoever as an object of mind, and therefore it would be to meditate on emptiness. This is a mistaken understanding of emptiness. So to enter into selflessness and such needs to be done on the basis of having the right understanding of what emptiness means.
Tirda jeromuchik songde ta jeromuchik namten dor dudo tiredos tambu jachin teba mount sal pardu jonglu tamje dambash tamanin zengun nyamsle konje temba gibi chedungu seti dodi samul temba ti yungu dasro tambu jachin teba mount sal tuwana ani jonglu tamje damga do chavadi ko ngangil ligres jonglu tamje damga do chabaina ani nyinse dine pigege ani nyamle lambe go chona ta chagen samaro 상그레스 로도 쪽으로스 라다 인생 딘 냠네 제토바나 아니 템바든 조유텐 다 딜리체직 다 요마레스 라.
And this approach is found in, you can say, the brief summary that Lamrim Tsongkhapa gave on his life. So he said, at the beginning, I sought extensive study. In the middle, all those instructions done to my mind as instructions for practice. At the end, day and night, I put it into practice, and thereby I delight in the Buddha's teachings. So think about it in relation to those powers that we've covered now, relying upon the Profound Sutras, believing in emptiness, and so forth. First of all, as Lamrim Tsongkhapa said, first of all, I sought extensive study, much learning, and then after I invested a lot of time in learning, then whatever I studied done in my mind is instructions for my own practice, so that based upon that, my mind got expanded, wide and open. And through that, day and night, I invested effort in practice. Shall we leave it here for today? Okay. So we have all the big bosses here in the room, so we can probably leave it here for today. So finish off with the final Lamrim prayer. For my two collections fasted space to have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eyes blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be healthy and loving compassionate for all lives, Manjushri. May I find the best complete graded parts of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice, using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion. May I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path as I've discerned them. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going up with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by even this graded path enlightenment, completed due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all humans and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never departed in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to work in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtues practices, may always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere.